everybody, I'm Jen,
And I'm Tammy.
and they call us Woo.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to talk about spirit guides. So I
Woohoo!
was kind of led to this thought process because I just had a super amazing experience receiving my Usui Holy Fire 3 Reiki Master. It and I went through this whole like weekend training, this 3 day training and stuff, and it was super awesome. Um, in that though, there's certain meditations you're taken through, and you go through whatever wherever it is you're going to go in your mind. And I went through a lot of different visualizations, and one of the visualizations, my a spirit guide, Sister Moon, that's been with me for a long time, through other lives as well. Um, it was her time to exit. And I might get a little emotional around it because it was a little hard because she has been there as like a loving, supportive, um, almost like motherly figure or like that really awesome auntie or something for a really long time. And it was kind of this like, you got this, kid. I was very drawn to this particular class. I knew there were some things that were going to be moving and things that I was going to be embracing. I wasn't expecting that, and that did make me emotional because, like Jen and I were chatting about before this, like, you know, on the grand scheme of things, yeah, totally, that's awesome. She's moved on. You know, there's other things she's doing, but my human self is very much like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready. It's kind of like having a friend move away and you know you're just not going to talk to them for a really long time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it got me thinking that we've talked about spirit guides in other episodes, but we haven't really talked about this whole idea of what they are and like how people connect with them and what they what they can be and what they do. So we thought that might be kind of fun to talk about today.
It can be anything like unicorns and dragons and Bigfoot and
Yes. And
whoever
fairies.
comes in. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, there's I think it's interesting because there's identification that they give you so you can identify who they are. And sometimes it is connected to like previous lives and stuff like that, where maybe you had a life with that person or that they were a spirit guide during that time or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily like at their, energetic level. It's not necessarily like what they look like. It's just what helps you identify them. But they can be a wide range of, you know,
Mhm.
beings,
Yeah,
aliens, lots of different things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sitting here thinking because people's guides come in a lot while I'm working on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one client that I work with on a regular basis, and one of his guides is Seamus. And he's like hysterical. He makes jokes about everything. He is the least serious guide you will ever meet. He's meant to bring lightness and brevity to any situation. And sometimes it's funny because this client's guides, Seamus like gives this weird, like offhanded remark about something, and then the other guides will be like, "Can we just be serious?" Like, so it's like sometimes his guides are like, dude, can you just calm down for a second? We need to actually deal with this situation. And
That's
he's always
hilarious.
like, no, we need to like have a little bit of lightness about this, and we need to stay balanced in joy and peace and playfulness at the same time as we're dealing with things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, spirit guides can be a whole lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and serious is not necessarily one of the requirements.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's all about like what you guys signed up for together,
Yep.
basically. Like
Yeah.
you signed up for something well before you had this experience that you're having in this human life. And there's things that you knew a long time ago that you would need or
Yeah.
things that you guys agreed to do together, and that's kind of the awesome part of it is like when they're there, like And you don't always know, or you don't always need to identify all of your spirit guides right off the bat. There's ones that will come forward more strongly because that's an important part of your relationship, is you knowing and being aware that they're there and helping you. And then there's a bunch others that might come in and out that, you know,
Mhm.
you might not necessarily need to know who they are at the moment,
Yeah.
but it's good to know they're there. Like, I've had interesting experiences with the Archangel Gabriel too, who um, comes and goes based off a relationship I have with somebody else,
Hmm.
because he was very connected to that person as a child and helping to protect that person as a child,
Hmm.
because that was a big part of their experience. And then their experience is connected to my experience. And so it's like, it's interesting because it's very obvious when he's there, but it's usually connected to other things. And there's been support he's given me too, but it's fascinating because I'm like, oh, he comes when he needs to,
He's
and I
here.
need to identify. If I need to identify him, then I can. Now,
Yeah.
granted, it's a lot easier to do all of those things since I have received more clarity on all of this stuff and being able to see all that stuff. But I know there's been times I've been with you and we've done work on each other, and you've seen like so many more that I wouldn't necessarily be able to pinpoint, even though I know they're there. I wouldn't necessarily be able to be like, oh, I know the name and you
Yeah.
know, the whole history with this guide. They're just there when they need to be.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
what is, that's why I thought it might be interesting to talk to you too, because you do see so many of people's spirit guides when you work. So, what is your understanding of your own guides?
With my own guides. Well, okay, so I'm gonna start with like what guides are, because a lot of the time people think that their guides have to be somebody who's passed over, that has known you
Mm-hmm.
in this lifetime, and that's not necessarily the case. In fact, most of the time that's not the case. Um, Most of the time it's like somebody who you've had an agreement with when you entered into this lifetime to assist you. They are often people who have been here on this earth plane before. They've walked through certain experiences, and because they've walked through those experiences, they have the kind of street cred to walk with you on those things. Whereas like angels are a little bit different, because angels typically have not been on the earth. There's earth angels, that's a different thing. But angels typically have not been on the earth, and they're there to guide you, but in a different way. They're there to guide you from a spiritual standpoint, from a higher perspective standpoint, whereas guides are meant to help you with your street smarts, like in this earth plane. Um, so I want to start there for anybody who's like, what the heck is a spirit guide? My spirit guides, I've had a lot of influx and like people coming and going throughout my life. Um, when I was a kid, I had a child who was one of my guides. His name was William. And he was with me all the time. I learned a lot from him. He terrified me sometimes because I didn't quite understand who he was, but I was also very comfortable with his presence because he was always there. So he was kind of like a little brother to me that never aged. Um, but so I connected with him all the time. And when I struggled through things and when I couldn't figure things out, he would kind of walk me through things. He was very, very connected to Jesus. He's actually who introduced me to Jesus as a child, um, in spirit form. And I mean, lots of people on this earth plane introduced Jesus to me in a very different way. Um, but so I've always had William was around me for a long time. Jesus has always been around me. I actually just recently had a conversation with Jesus about how he's not actually my guide. He's just a presence who's always there to help guide me, um, which was interesting for me to hear. Um, as I got older after William shifted out of my life, Wind Eagle kind of stepped in more in the forefront and started helping as one of my lead guides. There's typically People typically see two or three guides in their field of reference and work with two or three guides at a time. That does not mean that you don't have more or less around you. Some people have 20 people who are around them at all times, and then they just flip back in and out, in and out, in and out when you need them. But typically, there's like three main people who are working with anybody at a time, in my experience. Um, Usually when people start opening up and experiencing things on a psychic level, or just opening up their experience a little bit more and opening up their third eye a little bit more, they start to recognize that there's someone that they're communicating with. And that's usually one of their lead guides, one of the people who has kind of contracted with you to be there in the forefront because you have very specific things that you're working on. And those are the specific things that you need to work on in that portion of your life. So it's like, if you were building a house, you're going to find a contractor who knows how to build that house and work with that contractor. You're not going to work with the plumber who only knows plumbing
Mm-hmm.
to build the house. So it would be like your lead person would be that contractor, and then you might have the plumber in the background, and you might have like a drywaller in the background. Like those are also supporting guides who are there to help you with that specific task. Once you complete that house that you're building, they might be like, okay, we're done with this task. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
shift on. And then let's say you need to now start working on your garden in your yard. You're going to have a whole landscape team that comes in and starts working with you because you have a new task and a new thing that's going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Typically it'll show up though as like conflicts or different interests or just very specific things that are happening in your life. Those guides are there to walk with you through.
Right.
um, so for me, I've had a lot of um, religious trauma, a lot of things that I've walked through, and that's part of the reason why Jesus was introduced to my team, even though he was like an overseer of all the things. That's part of the reason why he was part of my team. Wind Eagle also stepped in as part of that team to help show me that it's okay to explore my other beliefs and explore other traditions outside of what was mainstream norm within my family and within my social circle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, those were major themes. Um, that's not the case for everybody though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fascinating to talk about, and I appreciate you laying it out there a little more clearly for people. Also bringing up the point that it's not necessarily people that you have known in this life. It can happen. I did
Mhm.
have some someone I knew in this life that was briefly a spirit guide with me, but part of it was also fulfilling a level of forgiveness and love that I needed to give this person after they passed. And then they continued to do something for me, and then they were able to move on with other things. But
Mhm.
also, that means that we all can have been in this role for other people at some
Mhm.
point.
Yep.
And that is part of the really cool thing too, is I don't think people always think about that. They think like this life, this existence, this is it's very sometimes linear of like if you have like past life regressions or whatever else, that like it has to be in your family line, right? Like you have to
Mhm.
find that stuff in your family line, and that's like we get to pick what family lines we go into too. That's kind of like the
Yep.
cool thing. And we in our in betweens, when we've decided that we want to move into another life, whether it be on this earth or somewhere else, and have another experience, we spend a lot of time also working in the spirit realm. And that's
Mhm.
super cool that
Yeah.
some of these connections are also, could potentially be we were fulfilling that role for them at one point too.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's exciting because there's so many options for things that we can, it's just endless things that we can do. And how really we never are alone. We always have those with us. Some, like yourselves, have been able to see it their whole lives. Others maybe have had feelings, but they couldn't put their finger on it. Some people might refer to them as guardian angels. Like a lot of
Yep.
people are very open to being like, oh, it's my guardian angel. We're basically explaining the same thing. you know, and there could be some angelic actual, work
Yeah.
in there too. But generally, when people refer to guardian angels and they explain what they're referring to, it sounds like spirit guide work to me.
Mhm.
But it's been kind of fun in sessions that we've done together too. Like, there's been times where I knew there was a lot of presence. I was so like deep into relaxation or whatever, and sometimes that means I get to just like let go of whatever I'm trying to figure out. So
Yeah.
then you get to tell me all the cool stuff that happened in the room, and then we get to like compare, like, oh yeah, I heard this thing, and you're like, yeah, that was when this happened. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So it's really fun to be able to interact with other people like that too. And there's been times that Wendigo has stepped in to tell me things too, like asked you to tell me things. And it's just this beautiful, like interconnected web of experience and light. And I think there's people out there that probably really want to know and understand their spirit guides and how to connect with them.
Yeah.
I feel like over time, my general lesson has been uh, try less with your head and
Yeah.
more with your heart, and things will start to become more clear. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to always figure all the things out. They're doing their thing regardless of if you can identify who they are and exactly what they're doing. But if you really do give yourself the space to just be quiet and not like, oh, I need to figure all this out, show me yourselves or whatever, which again, we've talked about before. They don't need to show themselves when we ask. They also have free will and can do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But if you really want to feel the presence and you feel like there's something you really need, more than likely someone is already there with you.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of always there
Yeah.
in certain forms. So sitting quietly and allowing yourself to just feel, I think, is a good way to start that process if you're curious about your own spirit guides.
Part of that is also trusting because so many times, and I hear this from people that I've worked with forever, and I've been talking to a couple of different kiddos lately who are trying to look at their own experiences and understand. And one of them asked me the other day, well, how do I see my spirit guides? And I'm like, well, do you hear them? And they're like, well, sometimes I think I hear things, but I think it's really just me. And I'm like, okay, we need to start there. Like, start writing down what you're hearing, what you're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
and allow yourself to suspend your disbelief and allow yourself to experience whatever you're experiencing as if that is your spirit guide. Because a lot of the time we talk ourselves out of
Mm-hmm.
the information that we're receiving because they're like, oh, well, that must be just my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But as I told her, it's not necessarily like, even if it wasn't true, like, even if that's not your guide, is this good information for you to listen to?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're experiencing something and you're getting an education and you're getting information that you need.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's coming from your guide or if you're making it up in your head. If it's information that you need, listen to it. So
That's a good
I was,
point.
I always tell people to start by writing it down. And then you can figure out from there, okay, is this something that I was thinking about before? And this is just like a continuation of my thought? Or does does the voice sound differently than me? Oftentimes it's our own voice that we'll hear. Um, but our cadence is different if it's our guides speaking to us. The words that they're using are different if it's our guides speaking to us. When we have our own thoughts, we tend to think the same way that we would speak, think in the same words that we would speak. And also, we will bring in negative self talk. Our guides will never bring in our negative self talk unless they're calling us out on our BS. Um, and so I always tell people write it down. Write down what you're getting when you are asking for information. Write down the images that you hear or feel or see,
Mm-hmm.
um, and start documenting it. Like, start looking at it and start looking at it as if it was true.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's a huge first step for people.
I love that. I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm like, I don't know why we are always so afraid of being like bamboozled, like being made to look dumb or something like that. Like, I can't believe I believed that. Like, why we're always just like trying to find the other thing that we're like, no, I'm smarter than that. Like, why? It
Yeah.
just occurred to me the other day. I'm like, I myself too, like, we all do it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why is that such a big deal? Because on the other side of that is usually when you start to really feel and connect more. And one of the things, like, you tell people to write stuff down, which I think is an awesome way to do it. I also have given people advice where if you're comfortable with something you do trust, like some people really do trust their pendulum, some people really do trust like muscle testing or the sway test, whatever you want to call it, start there. Like, if you get
Yeah.
something and you're like, was that me or was that something else? Like, ask if that, if you interpreted it correctly or if that was really your guide or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and start to see what responses you get, because then at least you're starting with something that you do trust
Yeah.
until you build the trust and start to recognize, like, oh, I know this, I've heard this before, this sounds familiar, or I've seen this certain thing outside. Because there's so many ways that you can get information. You can get
Yeah.
animal signs, you can get, you know, weird sensations, you can hear things, you can smell things. There's like all different things that you can get information from, but you'll start to recognize after you have confirmed. I've had times where I've confirmed so much that it was like, yeah, okay, come on. Like, my guys are literally like, do we have to keep answering this question?
Mm-hmm. Yep. My guides have been known to say to me, Jen, when are you going to listen? Like, they'll just be very blunt about it. When are you going to listen? When are you going to allow yourself to believe what you already know?
Hmm.
And they're just very real about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something I'm going to say to myself. Like, if I'm saying something like that to myself, honestly, it's going to have a lot of like blame and a lot of shame and a lot of like projection in it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how I know that it's different because they don't come at me like that. They're like, Jen, like being real, when are you going to listen? End of story. Shortest, truest.
Yes. And those are the
Yeah.
moments where you're like, really, this is what I asked for? Okay, cool. Because you know, you actually asked for this information to be given to you in a blunt fashion because you know you're not listening.
Hmm.
Your
Yep.
higher self is just up there like, come on. And I know
Yep.
my higher self is pretty sassy and like very straightforward and is not going to keep answering the same question over and over again. So
Yes.
thankfully, some of my guides are willing to keep answering until they're finally like, okay, well, I guess we will answer this for you again, but come on.
See, and it's funny because sometimes, because I can see my guides, like actually see them sometimes, I'll ask a question and they'll just do this and just look at me because they're like, you already know the answer to
For those
this.
listening, she had kind of a little sassy face.
Kind of like the mom look where you know that you're
Yes.
kind of in trouble, or if you don't
Or
knock
they're
it
just
off,
tired of you.
yes, like really, are you freaking kidding? And like I said, they don't put like judgment or anything into it. It's just they know that I understand this is a okay, I'm gonna look at you so that you know we're going to take a pause for a second so you can think about your actions and think about the question you just asked because you already know the answer. And so like I said, it's not a judgment thing. It's not a like them projecting blame or shame or anything onto me.
Mm,
If any of that comes through, that's mine. Like I know
right.
that's mine.
Well, and
Um,
realistically, like we can choose to listen to and respond to whatever we want. I
mhm.
mean,
Yep. Yep.
we can go over the same thing a million times before we choose to actually like identify it and accept it. It just is what it is.
hmm
That
You
did
have
bring up a really interesting thing that happened though, because I've always felt like unless my guides really want to show me exactly what they, look like or whatever, it's the
mhm.
same as kind of when I do soul connection. Like, I know I've seen really magnificent, beautiful things, but I also understand that some of it is sometimes symbolic. So I understand what it is I'm looking at.
Yeah.
When Sister Moon left, that was the first time that I actually saw like a full image of her and not just her hands, because I saw mostly just her hands
Yeah.
most of the time. And that was actually like really beautiful too, because I'm like, I feel like that was a really sweet way to be like, all right, now you can see all of me and like, you got this. See you later.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
sorry. Anyway, you were gonna say
That's
something. I don't need to
well,
cry again.
that's okay. It's a moment of saying like kind of see you later.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. I get that. Um, you mentioned seeing other people's guides and connecting with other people's guides and getting information for other people. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because a lot of the time people assume that you can automatically talk to other people's guides, like if they come forward. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I work on somebody in a session, a lot of the time information will still come through my guides because I have protective barriers. Like I have kind of like in a firewall around me of what can come into my field. And if I don't know an energy that's coming into my field, I'm going to be much more like, hold on, we need to do some tests. You need to answer all of these questions before you can come into my energy field. I want to make sure that this is safe. And so a lot of the time, like if I do a reading or something, my guides are going to be the relays of information because they understand the way that my brain works. They understand the way that my energy field is laid out. They understand like these parameters that I have. So it's almost like I have these codes set up with them. So if they show me like wax lips or something like that, like they just show me this random weird picture to you. If my guides came in and said wax lips to you, you'd be like, what the heck are you talking? And I would be like, oh, that's like when I was a child and going and doing blah, 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 blah. And it creates a whole story
Yeah.
for me that it wouldn't create for you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes my guides will speak to me in the quickest codes possible. So when your guide comes in and starts giving information, my guides are going to give me a an image that's going to give me the same emotional response that you would have from the image that they're showing me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a way to relay emotions and relay quick information that I wouldn't necessarily get from a picture. So if your guide came in and showed me um like a black bow tie, that's probably going to bring a different picture and a different feeling for you than it would for me. So if the black bow tie symbolized like fancy parties, my guides might come in and show me like this giant spread of all these fancy desserts and foods. And that's going to elicit the same response.
Mm-hmm.
So so when you're connecting with other people's guides, some people will allow those guides to come in and talk directly to them. Other people are going to have that relay. So it's like your guides are going to tell my guides and they're going to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then for me, as I've gotten more comfortable and can quickly assess whether or not somebody can come into my energy field, there are other times where those guides can come directly in. The other piece of that, though, is they have to be comfortable with my energy field too.
Mm-hmm.
So if my energy is not a match, or for whatever reason, my energetic vibration is not high enough to connect with them, or it's not like at the right frequency for them to connect, they're not going to step in to give me the information. Again, they're going to relay it through my guides so
Mm-hmm.
that the information comes through as quickly as possible and as clearly as possible.
Yeah.
So I just felt like people might want to know that and might want to understand, because sometimes people assume that if you can see your own guides, you'll be able to see everybody else's guides too. And it
Right. Yeah.
doesn't
Well,
always work that way.
and like we said, even your own guides sometimes are only going to show you what it is
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
you need to understand. But the interesting thing is, I mean, everybody sees and feels and hears this stuff differently. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have a tendency to be like, oh, I wish I could see it the same way. Like sometimes I get full on like videos where I'm just taken on a whole adventure.
Yeah.
And more often than not, when I'm doing the connecting, I'm not necessarily connecting directly visually with their guides. I'm connecting with their soul version of themselves. Like our two souls are like connecting. And then all this other information, it's like they take me on the adventure. So
Yep.
whether this information is coming through guides or whatever, it's the information is still coming. And
Yeah.
sometimes I have no idea what it means, but I just say like, well, this is what I saw. And then they are usually, the person I'm talking to is usually the one that's like, oh my goodness. Sometimes they don't quite understand it either. And I give them as much information as I can, where I'm like, you know, sometimes this is just not clear when you first get it until
Mm-hmm.
something else happens, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that thing, or something like that. And sometimes it's immediately evident, and they're like, oh my God, that totally makes sense, and usually
Yep.
elicits a very emotional response. But one thing I have noticed is that my guides will use any way that I'm paying attention to. So as I've developed over time, the things that I actually pay attention to consistently is the route that they choose to go. Because, like you said, they want to get the information to you in any way they can, and generally, like the most efficient way possible,
Yep.
which I can respect that. So, I've even noticed there's been times where, like, I used to pay a lot of attention to one particular way of being made aware that there was, a presence. And if I stopped paying attention to that as much, then something else started to happen instead. Or wherever I am, like the thing, homework, wherever I am, there's like specific things that will grab my attention. So the way that I see things and the way that they get my attention might be completely different than yours. It's all what you pay attention to. Like they can see what gets you alert,
Mm-hmm.
and they will use those methods and sometimes over and over again until you start to go, wait a minute, maybe there's something behind this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I mean, it's kind of like when I've taught in the past, and whatever your teaching style is, I feel like the most rewarding way of teaching is to adapt to whatever someone's learning style is rather than have them adapt to you. So
Yeah.
you just keep on trying stuff until something works and it clicks. And then you just get this joyful experience out of like, yes, they get it. It clicks. And it's kind of what I
Mm-hmm.
visualize my guides doing sometimes, like, yes, she got it. We've been
Uh-huh.
trying so many different ways and she finally
Uh-huh.
got it.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, but I think it is really encouraging, and I think it's just yet another way that I identify how much the universe is based in pure love, to know that there's really never a moment when we're alone. Even if we feel alone on this planet and we might not have some of the people around us that we wish we had, we are literally never alone, in the sense that there's always support on the other side.
They're always watching you.
In a really nice way, not a creepy
Not in a
way.
creepy way, not weird
Yes.
little holes in your wall.
No.
Like, no, none of
No.
that. Like,
no. But it's been in the moments, I think in some of those moments of desperation when you are feeling, when you're just completely in your feels, but you
mhm,
also have completely let go of any analyzation of anything because you're just in your feelings. Those are the moments that I think I've had some of the most beautiful experiences, like actual feelings of being embraced and stuff like that
yeah,
physically. And those moments when I've seen that, like cardinals are a big deal to me. Like all of a sudden you see this beautiful cardinal sitting outside your window and you just know what it means and you just get this really really wonderful response from it because you're reminded that like we got you, even though you
yeah,
can't always see us with your eyes, we got you.
yeah, yeah. I don't know why that just brought up. So a long time ago, quite a while ago, one of my puppies passed away. She wasn't a puppy. She was quite old, actually. And like 2 months later, I was cooking eggs in the morning and I had my eggs cooking in the pan. And I think I was actually just cooking egg whites. And all of a sudden, in the middle of my egg whites bubbled up and it was a perfect paw print. Like, perfect, like, absolutely perfect. I'm sure I have a picture of it on my phone somewhere. Um, and I was like, oh, my hunty puppy's here. And it was just like this beautiful nod from the other side. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you need that little extra boost. My puppy is not one of my guides, but it was just a little nod from the other side of a sign and a way that they can kind of connect with you and just show
Mm-hmm.
you that they're there.
What do they call those,
And
pennies from heaven? Isn't
oh
that the
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Not Penny, Puppy Prince. It was very cute. It was perfect. Like it was absolutely perfect paw print. And I was like, oh, my puppy's
I
here.
love that.
I'm sure everybody else was like, why is there a puppy print in your eggs? Like, that's weird. But it was very cute. It just
Oh,
like bubbled up perfectly. It was I'll see if I can find that picture.
I
Maybe I
love
can post
that.
that with this if I can find it. I have to
Yeah,
figure
and
out what it
the
was.
moral of the story, if you're still very uncertain about all this too, is like, is it really that bad if you do believe, even if you
Hmm.
think, like, oh, but maybe I'm just making this up? You don't have to be afraid of feeling or, you know, dumb or whatever. Like, who are you feeling dumb to? Yourself? Like, who
Hmm.
cares?
Yeah.
Like, what's the harm in really like paying attention to some of those things, and
Hmm.
realizing that there's a million different ways that you can be connected and contacted, but
Hmm.
until you start to trust that there is this connection and that there is guides that are really trying to support you,
Hmm.
you might not be able to feel it the same way. And that's also
Yeah.
okay if that's your
Yeah.
choice. But my big thing for when I was able to start to really open up a lot more was around trust. And once
Hmm.
I identified that there was a piece of me that really didn't trust that information that I was getting, and I was able to kind of reconcile that in my head and offer love to myself in a different way, a lot of other things started opening up.
Hmm.
And on the other side of it, you start to wonder why you were so afraid of it in the first place. And it could
Yeah.
just be that you weren't ready. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have other things that you've already decided you wanted to experience before you have that. But once you have embraced it, you
Hmm.
really realize that there's nothing to be afraid of. And it's actually very beautiful knowing that there's others who just want to support you for
Hmm.
your highest and best.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's part of it is a social conditioning aspect. Like we're conditioned to believe that we have to fit in and we have to follow the social norms. And especially with sharing information, like when it's just ourselves, like it's just us beating ourselves up and concerned about if we're making stuff up for ourselves or if we're crazy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think that we've been conditioned to believe in a lot of cases that these types of things don't happen to normal people.
Yeah,
And I'm putting
the
that in
judgment
quotes.
piece. Yeah.
Like there's a judgment piece around the social aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't want to believe, because if you believe, then you might be pushed out of society, you might be pushed out. And I think one of the things that I've had to get over in my lifetime is recognizing that there's a lot more people out there that believe this stuff,
Yeah.
that are afraid to talk about it, than not.
That's why I
Like,
think stuff like this is really cool, though. I mean, the internet can be crazy sometimes, but you also can get access to things in the privacy of your own home that you might not feel fully comfortable accessing in person,
yep,
or, being out there in the world asking questions about it.
yep,
And I think that's a really cool way to, yeah, to recognize too that there's a lot of people who are very interested in this kind of thing and
yeah,
feel, I think, at a very deep level that it makes sense, even if they kind of talk themselves out of it. But
yeah,
fear of judgment is a huge thing. Like you said, I mean, biologically, we want to be in societies because it offered protection. But most of
yeah,
us, I'd say, probably don't need to have the same type of protection of like staying alive overnight because you're with your group of people. Not
yeah,
saying there's not still out there, but that is something that we can safely, in most cases, start to move from and know that we're not going to lose our lives if we are cast out.
yeah.
Um, but it doesn't mean that that fear hasn't been perpetuated over the years. And sometimes it's not fear of other people's judgment. We're also judging ourselves. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, yeah, I don't know how many times I'm like, why am I so like concerned about whether or not I'm right about this? Like, who, it's in my own head.
Yep.
What will be
Get
the
out of your
harm?
head.
What would be the harm in believing that this is like true instead of being like, oh, if I admit that this is true, then I'm going to look dumb if it's not. Who cares? Like, seriously,
Chances are
Tammy.
I might look dumb already. It's fine.
Right? And
I
I
do lots
think,
of things.
yes. And I think that in my grand plan of moving through lots of fears over the last year when it comes to finances and lots of other things, the people who often have the most full lives are the ones that don't care if they look dumb sometimes. And
Yes.
those, I admire those people. I admire
Yep.
like the really kooky old lady who wears whatever she wants and says whatever
Hmm.
she wants and literally doesn't care and is just happy being herself. Like, we all want to be those people.
Yes. Yes.
So, if we allow ourselves to just sit for a minute and be like, okay, what if this thing that I'm feeling right now was my spirit guide? What if this thing I'm feeling right now was a message? How would I feel about that?
Hmm.
Maybe we can try to not judge ourselves if we're like, I think it's real.
Yeah.
Because I found
Yeah.
most of the time it is. If I
Hmm.
have that instinct, most of the time it's correct.
Yeah. So it's time for Jen's weird question of the day.
Yes.
Because Jen's always full of weird questions of the day. And I don't think these ones are actually that weird. But I'm very curious, like how many of our listeners have connected with their guides,
Mm-hmm.
and what they envision their guides are like, who they envision their guides to be. Like, I'm very curious if we have people who are listening that have seen or feel like they know what their guides look like, or what they feel like, because that's a thing too. Like, not everybody sees the same way. When I say see, I mean like
Mm-hmm.
just what your sense is of them. So I want to know. I want everybody to tell me who their guides are, because I'm curious.
Yes, please. I agree. And thanks for going on this journey with us today,
Yes.
with our guides being present and laughing at us.
Yes. Always. They're not laughing at us. They're laughing with
That
us.
is true. That's true. Thanks for laughing with us today.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we, oh, sorry. I was just going to
go,
say,
go, go, go for it.
we'll see everybody next week.
Yes.
Was there anything else
Yes.
you wanted to say?
No.
Okay.
I'm just going to make this really awkward for everybody at the end.
Nice. All
We're going to give
right.
everybody an awkward pause, let you think about what you've done by listening
Right.
to us.
Oh no, don't think too hard about that.
No, no, do because you've done something amazing for yourself.
Oh,
You
there you
have
go.
opened your mind and become more clear on who your guides are because now you know that you can just listen to the guidance.
Perfect.
The end.
Bye, everyone. If you want more woo, please feel free to check the links in the description. Of course, we love hearing from you, so keep letting us know all of your lovely ideas. Have a beautiful day, our wonderful woo mates.